Hello, everyone. Well, did you guys happen to see Adolf Biden's speech last night against the blood red Fuhrer background of a brick wall with his military members standing on guard behind him? Very controversial speech last night. And Biden is walking it back today after his famous quote took a lot of backlash. And that quote was Biden saying, quote, Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Let me show you that clip, and then I'll show you what he's saying today to walk it back. I had to post this on my backup Instagram. I created a backup Instagram yesterday because my main page is under assault from Instagram. Censorship is ratcheting up, literally just for reporting the news. They are censoring me. So here's the clip I posted.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans.
Mainstream Republicans. So Biden is trying to bring mainstream Republicans under his wing and somehow get their vote for 2024, if he's even capable of running at that point. So before we show you guys what he said today, let me shout out the sponsor of my coverage. How about this? Noble Gold is one of the sponsors of our show and has just been picked by Consumer Affairs, the ratings agency, as the overall #1 gold IRA company in the U.S. Talk to the team today if you're thinking of precious metals, and if you're quick, they are giving away an incredible 1/10 ounce American Eagle gold proof coin with every qualifying IRA or 401k rollover. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold. Call the team now, 877-646-5347 to find out more, or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. Okay, guys, can you hear me okay? I have got the clip of Biden today being asked about his speech. Here it is.
All right.
Mr. President, do you consider all Trump supporters to be a threat to this country?
No, everyone.
Come on, look, guys. You keep trying to make that case. I don't consider any Trump supporters. I do think anyone who calls for the use of violence fails to condemn violence when it's used. Refuse to acknowledge when an election has been won. Insists upon changing the way in which the rules can count votes. That is a threat to democracy. Democracy. Everything we stand for rests on the platform of democracy. When people voted for Donald Trump and support him now, they weren't voting for attacking the Capitol. They weren't voting for overruling the election. They were voting for a philosophy he put forward. So I am not talking about anything other than it is inappropriate. And it's not only happening here, but other parts of the world, where there's a failure to recognize and condemn violence whenever it's used for political purposes, failure to condemn the attempt to manipulate electoral outcomes, failure to acknowledge when elections were won or lost.
Okay, so that was him walking it back, saying, oh, no, I don't think any Trump voter is a threat to our democracy after he said yesterday that Trump voters threaten the very fabric of our republic. Okay, so his speech last night was about 25 minutes long. He talked about a few times about constitutionality, the importance of the Constitution, that Trump voters want to trample down the Constitution and that he wants to uphold it, which was extreme gaslighting as far as I could tell. Because, I mean, just a handful of things that I just made note of. It was Biden who attempted to force unproven needles into the arms of corporate employees against their will. And then the Supreme Court knocked it down, said, Biden, you're violating the Constitution. But Biden was going to force those people to do that and encourage snitching in corporations in order to make sure that it happens, because he didn't even have enough of federal agents to go double check whether ever all these millions of corporate employees had the needle in their arm. So he tried hard to violate the Constitution in that way, which would have hugely impacted a lot of people's lives who were unwilling to take that needle regardless, who were willing to fight, lose their jobs, do whatever. He tried very hard to throw out the Constitution there. He indeed successfully threw out the Constitution in regards to masks on planes. Okay. He conned Americans into wearing masks on planes for over a year, only later, over a year later, to learn from a federal judge that he had been violating the Constitution the entire time. Okay. He and his administration sent airport employees out over loudspeakers to lie to the American public that federal law mandates that you must wear a mask on a plane when a law was never passed. Blatant lies in airports and on airplanes. It drove me nuts the whole time because I knew Congress never got together and voted on this. Anyway, that was throwing out the Constitution there. It was Biden's Justice Department that raided the homes of innocent journalists at Project Veritas because they dared to look at evidence that was given to them in regards to Biden's daughter's diary. They were just doing journalism. Zero illegal activity. Biden trampled over the First Amendment to send his FBI agents to raid Project Veritas journalists' homes. It was his Justice Department that raided the homes of innocent protesters, namely the people from January 6th, and lock a lot of innocent people up. Sure, some people did commit petty crimes, others did not. Yet those people are locked up. It was his Justice Department that was a big violation of the First Amendment. You can get arrested for protesting, which is protected under the First Amendment, for doing journalism, which is protected under the First Amendment. It was his administration that is trafficking, to this day, illegal immigrants across our border by contracting Catholic charities. I went out and covered this last fall. Video documented evidence, timcast.com. It's when I filed a report for Tim Pool. His Justice Department is taking people who illegally cross our border, violating our federal law, violating our Constitution, and instead of reprimanding them for that, he's saying, yeah, let's trample the Constitution together. In fact, I'm going to pay Catholic charities to get you guys on an airplane. Catholic Charities' role is to, once the migrants are trafficked across the border, Catholic Charities prints out airplane tickets, gets those migrants in a taxi, and gets them to the airport so that the migrants can be trafficked all over the nation. And despite me and other journalists asking, Biden's administration will not tell us which migrants get these special tickets into America and why, and how it determines where they're going. Nobody can figure that out. Okay. So those are just a few things about the Constitution that Biden is trampling over. What are Trump voters trampling over exactly on the Constitution? Okay. Yet he said that our Constitution is threatened by Trump voters, not by him. I felt very gaslit. Okay. Let me show you a part of his speech last night that made my blood boil a lot. I don't know about you, but let's see. This is a very troublesome part of the speech.
American democracy only works only if we choose to respect the rule of law and the institutions that were set up in this chamber behind me. Only if we respect our legitimate political differences. I will not stand by and watch. The will of the American people be overturned by wild conspiracy theories and baseless evidence-free claims of fraud. I will not stand by and watch elections in this country stolen by people who simply refuse to accept that they lost. I will not stand by and watch the most fundamental freedom in this country, the freedom to vote, and have your vote counted and be taken from you and the American people. Look, as your president, I will defend our democracy with every...
All right, so that part right there, he's not going to stand by and let our most fundamental freedom to vote get taken away. That made me want to cry, because that's what we're all doing in America right now, is standing by and letting our most fundamental freedom of voting get taken away. If you look at the immense amount of censored evidence, it's hard to find, because we live in a censored society at this point. It's really horrifying, but there are piles and piles of evidence in regards to the election. And he is out here gaslighting up a storm. And fortunately for him, there's a lot of low information voters, a lot of low information audience members who don't pay attention to any of this evidence. They just hear that it's a conspiracy theory when it's not. But many of us have now seen the surveillance video of those boxes. I'm going to have to talk in thick code words now, but when you pick your favorite guy to lead you in office, in 2020, you got to go to a little box that was sitting outside a library or something, and just drop your little envelope in there for your guy. Okay. Turned out, the people who did that in Wisconsin, turned out it was illegal. The Wisconsin's court later ruled, oh, sorry, that was against the law. So Wisconsin Election Commission violated the law, which may or may not have impacted the entire U.S. election. But many of us have seen the surveillance video now of certain people dropping large stacks of envelopes in those boxes, and then going back and the cell phone data has now been analyzed as well to show that they're going back and forth in between these nonprofits, I guess. And I'm still waiting to hear which nonprofits these are. But I understand lawsuits are on the line and things like that. So it is Biden who is saying he stands up for constitutionality, who is refusing to prosecute these people who trampled over our most fundamental right to cast our vote when they trafficked piles of envelopes into those boxes to pick their guy multiple times. Okay. He's not going out and arresting these people on election crimes. Okay. What about that AP article? Okay, few people, I feel like a few people heard about this. I talked about it on my coverage, but the Associated Press a few months ago came out with coverage of the findings of the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency after investigating the most notorious machine in the election, the one that starts with a D. They did indeed confirm just this year that those machines are extremely flawed, and that when you go to pick your guy, you can very easily accidentally pick the wrong guy due to the flaws in the machines. Okay, you pick this guy, but then the machine goes flip, and you accidentally picked the other guy. I'm having to talk weird like this in code words because it's YouTube. So they confirmed that flaw, okay? And nobody's even talking about the ES&S machines, okay? That is the ES&S is the most prominent machine brand in regards to picking your guy for office. It's the most prominent brand in the nation, used in more counties in the nation than any other machine brand. Nobody's talking about this. But the top sales vice president of sales, I guess it was, confirmed on video a major flaw in those machines. In regards to if any election judge nationwide in all these counties that use them, election judges, if they can find themselves alone with those machines, they can manipulate the heck out of the machine just by having the key to the bottom box. Okay. I'm going to just leave it there because it's YouTube, but we explored this in depth on my uncensored website, ivoryhecker.com. All right. The Michigan containers, you guys. Remember that? It was election night. There were these big old containers. You guys saw the surveillance video, right? In that case, it didn't need happen that unsupervised counting occurred. Okay, but everyone's gaslighting about that situation too. But indeed, the watchers were kicked out. So those people who just count up, do whatever they want with it. The fact that we are under intense censorship of this entire conversation in regards to elections is a huge part of the really horrifying situation we're in, where the most sacred part of being an American, being able to go pick your guy, is being shredded to pieces. And Biden gaslit us up a storm last night in saying the opposite, in saying that somehow Trump voters are the ones who are trampling over the sacred right to vote, when all they're asking for is more integrity in regards to let's make absolutely certain that every vote counts. And not to mention the Biden's DHS bulletins that have been going out, multiple bulletins each year about anyone who dares to question that election back in 2020, and that they might be a threat to democracy. Somehow they may be a terrorist. The anti-domestic terrorism bulletins that keep going out in regards to anyone who dares to post about the election shenanigans on social media and perhaps bring up this evidence that his bulletins are saying we're going to surveil you extra hard. We're going to be monitoring your social media if you talk about this too much. So what's up, Biden's DHS? Nice to see you guys. I'm sure you're surveilling me right now. It's all good, though. That's what journalists do. We cover this stuff the best we can. So this is what I'm talking about. This is the part when he talked about the election that way. It was really horrifying because there's so many piles of evidence that are all being suppressed. And when that election took place, I was in the corporate news working for Fox Corp, and Fox Corp immediately had this narrative. Fox Corp, which owns Fox TV stations local and Fox News and Fox Sports, they immediately had this narrative in place, these national packages that were going out, that like the election was solid. And meanwhile, as the reporter on the ground, I was getting all of this evidence to the contrary, and I was being told by my bosses not to cover it. So, that's just in regards to muzzling the corporate journalists. And then on social media, the social media sites were censoring everything. And then, we hear things from the Biden administration about like, oh, we flag things for Facebook, that Jen Psaki quote, that it's clear that the Biden administration is working with social media companies. I mean, we just recently heard from Mark Zuckerberg about the FBI. Zuckerberg's like, yeah, the FBI approached me before the election and said, hey, can you keep this evidence quiet? Because we're telling you it's Russian disinformation, whether or not it is. Just don't let anyone know about the president's son. The soon-to-be president's son. But so, that's a huge violation of our First Amendment right there. Huge violation of our Constitution. Huge violation of our sacred right to vote at the hands of Biden and all these corrupt people at the top. So, just to see him speak the opposite way with his creepy Führer background was just horrible. And he's fooling a lot of Americans right now. And I'm really concerned about our future elections because they're having such success with censoring election evidence. The cronies at the top, the corrupt Democrats, the corrupt rhino Republicans, right, and the corrupt media outlets, the corrupt huge corporations, the social media corporations. They're all working together to successfully shut down real information about how corrupted our election system is, and literally these machines that the Associated Press put on blast. They're saying, yeah, this agency actually looked at it. Oh, it's true. Our bad. Over a year later, Sidney Powell was right that you were going to pick this guy, and the machine made you pick that guy. It's true. It can happen. They came out with it, yet those machines are still being used. People who go to cast their sacred ballot are still having to do it on this corrupted machine. And that is so horrifying and sad to me, and that nobody seems to be doing anything about it. I know a lot of Republicans have been trying to push for election reform. Democrats are calling them racist for doing that and saying that they're trying to stop Black people from voting, which is the most absurd thing. But somehow it's working. Like, those machines are still in place. And in 2022, all these people who are fed up with Biden destroying our economy are going to go try to pick better representatives, but they're going to pick them on these faulty machines. And what's going to happen? It's going to be said that, it was due to that conservative Supreme Court, the Roe v. Wade thing. A lot of these women got upset and said, we're going to vote Democrat because Republicans don't believe in my body, my choice, or something. They're going to create some spin. There'll always be some spin to keep fooling you. When the truth is, we're in a really freaking bad spot with our elections. And I'm, as a media insider, having evidence shut down, the most sacred thing a journalist could cover, to let their viewers know about the sanctity of their vote. And my boss is again and again saying, don't let the viewers know about this stuff. Go cover some fluff piece. So we're in a bad spot. You're being lied to. You're being gaslit constantly. And you people who watch Fox News and Newsmax and think that those guys are going to shoot you straight. It's a little bit better over there, but it was Fox. It was Fox that was a huge part of this BS about perfect elections. 2020 election was the most perfect ever. Biden was the most popular guy of all time. Far more votes than any other president in history. Does anyone really believe that? Way more. Biden got way more votes than Obama. Can you guys believe that? Way more votes than Trump. Trump got more votes than Obama. Biden creamed both of those guys. Biden is just so freaking popular. I was going to talk about Hitler because, look, I checked comment sections. I checked posts that Biden was getting tagged in on Instagram after his speech. All the Nazi comments, so many comments about Biden as the next Adolf Hitler. Okay. People on the ground were seeing that speech, getting creeped out, saying this is dictator vibes. He reminds me of Hitler. So I pulled some sound bites from the rise and fall of the Third Reich, which is the official, most accurate historical documentation of Hitler's rise and fall to and from power. The rise and fall of the Third Reich. From the audiobook, I have some sound bites. So Hitler, to rise to power, he actually exploited the Reichstag fire. Okay, so Biden talking about Republicans as the most serious threat to the very foundations of our republic Hitler did indeed use that sort of rhetoric in the lead up to him seizing power. Germany was very splintered. It actually had a lot of political parties, like 10 political parties or something. And Hitler needed to figure out a way to take out some of the most popular political parties to try to get his to raise his popularity, to take power. And so it was actually the Communist Party that was a huge threat to him. Communists were pretty powerful back then. So he was a National Socialist. They had Republican, Democrat, Socialist Democrat. They had all these little groups, but he was a National Socialist. By the way, Nazi is short for National Socialist. And he was trying to figure out how to get rid of the communists. It later came out in the Nuremberg trials that that the Reichstag fire apparently was planned by Hitler and his Nazis as a way to blame communists for extremism. If he could take another political party and blame them for being so extremist that they would set the federal building on fire, then he could figure out a way to lock those guys up, send them to jail. Here's a little excerpt from the rise and fall of the Third Reich.
For Hitler had lost no time in exploiting the Reichstag fire to the limit. On the day following the fire, February 28th, he prevailed on President Hindenburg to sign a decree for the protection of the people and the state, suspending the 7 sections of the Constitution which guaranteed individual and civil liberties. Described as a defensive measure against communist acts of violence endangering the state, the decree laid down that restrictions on personal liberty, on the right of free expression of opinion, including freedom of the press, on the rights of assembly and association, and violations of the privacy of postal, telegraphic, and telephonic communications, and warrants for house searchers, orders for confiscations, as well as restrictions on property, are also permissible beyond the legal limits otherwise prescribed. In addition, the decree authorized the Reich government to take over complete power in the federal states when necessary and impose the death sentence for a number of crimes, including serious disturbances of the peace by armed persons. Thus, with one stroke, Hitler was able not only to legally gag his opponents and arrest them at his will, but, by making the trumped-up communist threat official, as it were, to throw millions of the middle class and the peasantry into a frenzy of fear that unless they voted for National Socialism at the elections a week hence, the Bolsheviks might take over. Some 4,000 communist officials and a great many Social Democrat and Liberal leaders were arrested, including members of the Reichstag, who, according to the law, were immune from arrest. This was the first experience Germans had had with Nazi terror backed up by the government.
So literally, because of the Reichstag fire, first of all, it said Hitler took away your freedom of speech, which we've definitely seen in our country. But then he blamed the communists specifically for setting this up and arrested thousands, including members of Germany's Congress, political leaders. Hitler arrested his opponents by staging a false flag. And a lot of people are now comparing that to January 6th, as we're seeing opponents arrested and as we're seeing, strong efforts to get the former president arrested in connection with that as well, because they're trying everything they can to not let Trump get back into power. So here's the thing. Our upcoming election is going to be, a lot of people are saying it's probably one of the most important elections. It's really, really important that we don't let Democrats get a supermajority. If we've gotten the hint from them of the power hunger that they have, their lack of respect for the Constitution, despite what Biden said last night, they are looking for a way to change our Constitution in a historic way. Okay, they want to pass sweeping laws that would change the very structure of our nation. But they really need a supermajority in Senate to do that, okay? Right now, not having a supermajority in the Senate's tied right now. if they can get 2/3, they can do major damage. Okay. So that's what this 2022 election comes down to. Hitler was facing a similar situation, you guys, 1933. Hitler, in order to obtain dictatorship, he had to get a supermajority in his favor. And this passage from the same book talks about that.
The plan was deceptively simple and had the advantage of cloaking the seizure of absolute power in legality. The Reichstag would be asked to pass an enabling act, conferring on Hitler's cabinet exclusive legislative powers for 4 years. Put even more simply, the German parliament would be requested to turn over its constitutional functions to Hitler and take a long vacation. But since this necessitated a change in the constitution, a 2/3 majority was needed to approve it. How to obtain that majority was the main order of business at a cabinet meeting on March 15, 1933, the minutes of which were produced at Nuremberg. Part of the problem would be solved by the absence of the 81 communist members of the Reichstag. Goering felt sure that the rest of the problem could be easily disposed of by refusing admittance to a few Social Democrats. Hitler was in a breezy, confident mood.
Yeah, so they talk about arresting certain political opponents and refusing admittance to other political opponents in order to reach that supermajority. The mass arrest of some of his opponents due to just calling them basically domestic terrorists was part of how Hitler obtained enough of a supermajority that he could change the laws to peacefully achieve dictatorship. So Germany attained dictatorship in peacetime. There was no big old scary revolution. The German people allowed themselves through just being pussies, being ignorant, standing by and, oh, I'm sure this will pass. It'll be fine, right? I'm scared to speak out or say anything. Someone else will do it for me. And that's what the Germans did. So Hitler finagled his way into a supermajority to change the laws in the Democratic Republic of the Weimar Republic of Germany at that time and change it right into a dictatorship peacefully because Germans were that pussy. Okay, here's the next bite.
The Hohenzollern Empire had been built on the armed triumphs of Prussia, the German Republic on the defeat by the Allies after a great war. But the Third Reich owed nothing to the fortunes of war or to foreign influence. It was inaugurated in peacetime, and peacefully, by the Germans themselves, out of both their weaknesses and their strengths. The Germans imposed the Nazi tyranny on themselves. Many of them, perhaps a majority, did not quite realize it at that noon hour of January 30th, 1933, when President Hindenburg, acting in a perfectly constitutional manner, entrusted the chancellorship to Adolf Hitler. But they were soon to learn.
Yep, they learned very quickly. It didn't take long for his tyranny to reign. Once he achieved dictatorship, thought he had put out enough propaganda about his political opponents. He went on a killing spree, killed a lot of his political opponents. And then it was years later that the Jews slowly, it was literally years later, I think 1938, that the major slaughter of the Jews started. So here's, I'm going to show one last soundbite. So here's the issue. Germans were so divided at the time. Like I said, they did have quite a few political parties, but enough division had been allowed to occur where everyone was like, ooh, I don't like this group because of that. I don't like that group because of that. And what we're seeing in our media a lot lately here in America is the same fragmenting of people saying, oh, let's turn against this group. Let's create a racial divide. Blacks and whites hate each other. Oh, like transgenders and gays and the straight people hate each other. All this, we're seeing so much division begin. If we allow this division to take root, we're asking for the next Hitler to take over us, because these people, these power hungry people at the top, they've got their tunnel vision locked in on their goals, and the American people are sitting there just taking in whatever propaganda is telling them to hate this or that instead of looking at the real concern here. I just, in conservative media, I can't believe how much BS there is about gay issues. Like, okay, I understand, like, you don't want your child to be indoctrinated into major surgery or something, right? But some of this stuff is over the top, and all it's doing is causing like gays and straights to hate each other, I feel like. And I'm like, can we cut that talk and talk about the things that the Biden administration are up to right now, which are insanely concerning for our freedom? Anyway, so the same little squabbling was happening in Germany, and it's literally what allowed Hitler to take power, because he was never popular, just like Joe Biden. Joe Biden has never been a very popular guy. Okay. And didn't matter. Hitler was never very popular either. He was too extreme. Most people got that he was a crazy extremist. But he did have a small fanatic base that loved him, and that's all he needed, because the country was so divided. Here's the last bite.
Of the vast non-Nazi middle class and the highly organized proletariat, all of which, as Papen mournfully observed much later, would give up without a fight. No class or group or party in Germany could escape its share of responsibility for the abandonment of the Democratic Republic and the advent of Adolf Hitler. The cardinal error of the Germans who opposed Nazism was their failure to unite against it. At the crest of their popular strength in July 1932, the National Socialists had attained but 37% of the vote. But the 63% of the German people who expressed their opposition to Hitler were much too divided and short-sighted to combine against a common danger which they must have known would overwhelm them unless they united, however temporarily, to stamp it out.
We gotta unite to stamp out these crazies. Okay. One last soundbite from Jeremy Brown, who is rotting in jail unjustly right now after the FBI raided his home and found that he had 2 guns that were unregistered. Oh my, so we're going to lock you in jail endlessly. And then we're going to come up with a story that appears to be fake of you having classified documents, which will never be proven true or false because the public's never going to be able to see those documents. Jeremy Brown had a message that we have got to freaking come together. Before he was arrested, okay? Before he was arrested, he released damning video of the FBI's corruption. And he said, look, people, America's in a bad state. If we don't set aside our differences and come together against these crazies at the top, then we're doomed. Here's him.
And if we don't wake up, if we don't unite, white and black, male and female, left and right, and realize that the actual true enemy are these corrupt, kleptocratic, technocratic tyrants in DC.
Oh, he finished it by saying, well, then enjoy that needle in the arm. That's all he had to say. If we don't unite, enjoy your needle in the arm. And basically our country's done for. So guys, stay focused right now and love your neighbor. Get together with your neighbor to defend each other's freedom. With that being said, you guys have a great weekend. I couldn't do truth bombs. I was feeling under the weather this week, and I was like, I don't want to have a guest on with me in case I get them sick or something. But I am feeling better now. I will see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend.